as women, or at least in my experience, I want everything to be successful, and I want to fix people, and I want to be a problem solver. And I just kept trying to fix it, and it kept breaking. And it had to get to the point where I had to accept that I was not going to be able to fix it. And I think once you get to that point, you get like this very calm clarity, and you can see everything from, miles above the earth. And you're like, okay, now this is my life.
On today's episode of the Fahrenheit podcast, we are welcoming Jaclyn Johnson. Jaclyn is a serial entrepreneur, brand builder, and creative force. She's the founder and chief creative officer of Create Cultivate, the trailblazing platform that redefined what it means to champion women in business. Through immersive events, digital content, and meaningful community, she's built a brand that's empowered millions of women to launch, grow, and own their own work. Outside of being a founder, Jaclyn is an inspiration. In this next episode of her career, she is channeling her experience into new ventures, one being Cherub, a next-gen angel investing collective, making the startup ecosystem more inclusive, accessible, and founder-first. Jaclyn's work lives truly at the intersection of ambition and access. She's known for turning ideas into movements and building brands that don't just make noise, but make an impact, all while entering into this next episode of her career. Welcome to the Fahrenheit podcast.
I was thinking a lot about you and your career, which is so multifaceted, and your life. And I kept coming back to this feeling of the pivot. Even what you just said prior about like picking up and deciding you maybe want to try a new city. I feel like you are someone that navigates change and in some ways has used change as a tactic or a tool for success. So let's talk about pivoting. Like, let's just talk about change.
So many pivots in my life. There's a lot of change and a lot of the same in some ways. I've had companies like Create Cultivate for like 12 plus years, like fucking long time.
So long.
And then obviously growing like rocket ship success, and then 2020. And having to pivot very quickly as an events company to digital, like trying to navigate the entire new world, trying to figure out, is this company surviving? How are we going to fix it? And so basically we were lucky in that we shifted quickly to digital. We had a built-in platform for membership, which at the time no one gave a shit about digital membership, but we had it built. So we launched quickly. We were able to move quickly and actually have a decent year despite literally being an events company during COVID. And then after that, selling the company to private equity and then stepping down and having like a 2-year identity crisis of like no longer being the CEO of Create Cultivate, figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, and then really kind of just like jumping into new things. So I left and ran a $20 million family office, which was like a whole new world for me. Getting into venture on that side was really fun. I'd been angel investing for a long time, but never like kind of in the venture side. And so, getting to invest in female-founded brands was super fun. That was like a whole new learning. And then leaving that, getting a divorce, moving to Napa, then basically meeting my now business partner, Marina, through a random series of events, starting a company called Blueprint with her and Allie Webb, then having the opportunity to buy back Create Cultivate while also launching a company, Cherub. It was just like a roller coaster of events. Whereas I was like, I'm going to take 2 years off, and then like completely did the opposite.
Totally. I did the same thing. Totally. I did the exact same thing. And I feel like what's interesting, even when you were just talking, the idea that Create and Cultivate could kind of like exist without you doesn't even like seem real. Your identity, to your point of the identity crisis, your identity is so connected. Was that hard for you to go through that? And what was that moment, I feel like, during your identity crisis where you actually realized and or had the opportunity to buy the company back?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. Twofold. One, I was like completely burnt out. So I was so tired building the company for 10 years. It was a bootstrap business, got it to 14 million in revenue, 4 million EBITDA, like really crushing it year over year, building like so fast on a plane every other week. And was feeling really good going into 2020. Our Q1, like we did 5 million revenue. We're on track for 25 million. We had people knocking down our door for acquisition, and then COVID. And I was at the point where I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm so tired. And then to have to like literally shock yourself into being like, nope, you got to keep going.
Yeah.
You got to figure it out and you got to make it work was really challenging. I always joke I was a weekend at Bernie's, my dead body just through the thing. Keep going. Did it. Got through the acquisition. Felt amazing, obviously, and very rewarding. I remember day one, a new CEO starting and me stepping back and just being on the board, not waking up to 100 emails, not being on the phone calls, not knowing where we were launching next, not knowing the strategy, because that wasn't my job anymore, you know? And I think it felt good in some ways where I was like, I can go to the grocery store at 11 a.m. Who are you
Madness.
people? Madness.
Literally.
I'm working out at noon. This is crazy. Kind of weird out of body experience. And then on the flip side, I think it was hard because one, I don't think consumers knew. They didn't understand what had happened because private equity, I think for a lot of people can feel confusing. And everyone still thought I was the CEO. There was a lot of confusion there, which was challenging. When things went wrong, I heard about it. And when things were good, I would hear about it, but then I wasn't part of it. It felt very strange. And then there was a lot of messages from people that were like, it's not the same without you. And that's really hard to hear because I obviously wanted the company to be successful without me. Yeah, it was like a real identity crisis, to kind of wake up and not be that person anymore. And it was hard. It was really hard. It's hard when you see like an Instagram post go live and you're like, ugh, why would they post that? But I'm like, no, this is their new style. I gotta be chill. Like, this isn't my thing anymore. And so for me, that was hard. What's interesting is that I started the Blueprint, which is a mastermind with Marina Middleton and Allie Webb from Dry Bar. And it kind of was like random how it happened. Marina had gotten in touch with me and was like, you should do a mastermind. I was like, I don't know. Masterminds feel kind of like cheesy and weird or like MLM-y. I honestly would only do it if I can have another super legitimate entrepreneur do it with me. Talked to Allie. Allie's like, I'm in. So we ended up doing it. It's such an amazing experience. So 75 women came together and it was my first time doing a small event. Every event I've done is like thousands of people create and cultivate. I'm not sitting one-on-one with attendees being like, tell me about your business. And it was the first time I had done like an intimate style event that I was like, this is so rewarding. Like, not only are they were getting value, but I was getting a ton of value. And so I absolutely loved it. And we did that. And we were kind of, just flying, did 7 figures year one. Like, it was just so fun. I was loving it, loved working with Marina. And then out of nowhere, I get a call from the PE firm basically talking about wanting to do the secondary sale on the company pretty quickly. It was not the plan. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so then initially I was like, okay, well, we have to find a good home for it. Who can acquire this? Let me think about like the strategics. So strategics meaning a Condé Nast, a Pop Sugar, a Refinery 29, those types of companies. Obviously during COVID, they all suffered. So they weren't buying companies, but private equity was. So they saw it as an opportunity to go out to the strategics. And so initially I was like, okay, like let me figure this out, being on the board. And then I just called Marina out of nowhere and I was like, this is random. This just fell into my lap. And I'm thinking about the Blueprint and I'm thinking about, Create and Cultivate. How do these work together?
And you're newly inspired by this like one-on-one connection that you actually got to see the impact that you were making on these women.
Exactly.
Which was different than what you were doing in the past.
Our model had always been like large scale tickets, low prices, right? $399 or like $499 or free. That was the max. And the Blueprint was expensive. It was like $12,000. I was shocked that people would want to spend that money. I was like, oh, I get the value of being in that room. Like, that's so powerful. And so it was just a totally different model. If we can bring this model and the existing model together, we have a really big business long term. And so I floated the idea. They weren't excited about it. It became a little heated towards the end because no one wants to sell back to the founder. That's like a no-no in private equity. At that point, I had to recuse myself because I was on the board and it was a conflict of interest. And so really Marina stepped in and we painfully negotiated a deal and were able to buy back the business end of 2023, which is like so bizarre. And then I was like, well, I'm back 2 years later. And so in 2024, we relaunched and recalibrated, acquired the Blueprint, and here we are.
What's so powerful, I think, about your story is this sort of vulnerability that has to come from having taken that beat. Maybe you were interested in other things and you wanted to kind of like, to your point, try and you did. You went out and you built a bunch of companies and you tried all these new things. But in some ways, maybe you were also just burnt out and exhausted. And in this story, there is no hiding from that. You are vulnerable in this idea that at that time of your life, you were weekend at Burning through that last era of it. I guess, how was it actually doing that? And were you vulnerable with your team at the time, or were you faking it and pretending that you still had that same level of passion and energy and like anything to get through the day.
For sure. So I had a really amazing COO, CFO. Her name's Neha Kumar. And I brought her on maybe like a year or two before the acquisition. And she was a real game changer for me and the company because I had gone through a failed acquisition in 2018, which was brutal.
Yeah.
I had like essentially PTSD around acquisitions. That failed a lot because I was so involved in the deal. I was too involved. I was too available for the people who were buying us. They ended up pulling out of the deal. The company's too reliant on you. That's a hard to swallow. And so I brought on Neha to be like, nope, I have a number two. And also she was like, I'm going to quarterback the deal. You run the company, because I thought the deal was done. We all did. When it fell apart, I had to restart, like essentially
everything.
I do not want to take my eye off the prize. Like you need to like do this. And she was like so down for that. And she was excited about it. And so she knew how burnt out I was. And she was like, I know you need this deal to work. You need to get this over the line because you're at the end of you're like wit's end. I think it was also hard because there were so many starts and stops. The failed acquisition in 2018, the COVID 2020. I was just like, oh my God, what else?
Yeah.
What else?
What else can you throw at me?
Out here like the Matrix, dodging bullets. I tried to hold it together for the team, of course, especially during COVID. Every CEO had to put on a brave face and be like, we got this, even though they were like, what's happening? It was horrible. Yeah. And so I definitely got through it. Once that deal was done, I think I personally changed significantly. Even now, going back into it, twofold. Marina is the CEO of Create Cultivate. I am not the CEO. And that was very clear from the beginning. I was like, I will not go back to how it was because I can't. I've done it.
Yeah.
I don't have the hunger, the passion, the energy anymore to do the whole CEO dance. I want to be the chief creative officer. That's what I do best. That's what I thrive at. I can't do all the other things. And so she was like, I'm in. That's what I want. And like, she's hungry. She like wants it. And so it's a perfect partnership.
What was the shift like for you in going from being the CEO to chief creative officer? And by the way, what was it like to relinquish that control? As much as you wanted to give it up, there's also a reality of like letting it go.
Yeah. So it's been interesting. The private equity had brought in a CEO, Kate Spees, who was amazing. So I'd already had a little taste of it, but I obviously wasn't involved. She was an amazing CEO. I learned a lot from her, honestly, like watching from the sidelines. So that was kind of my first taste of it. With Marina going into it, we had like very tough conversations up front, which I think were really important. This is your show. You are the CEO. You are fiscally responsible for this business. At the end of the day, if you win, I win. If you fail, I fail. You have to know I'm always on your team. And I will give you advice based on my experiences. But at the end of the day, it'll be your decision. Mm-hmm. And that's always how we've done it. I will tell her, I don't agree with that. I wouldn't do that. But at the end of the day, I give her the power because you have to. If there's a power struggle at the top, it'll never work. And the team reports into her. No one reports into me. It's a very clear line. What I do is very specific, and what she does is very specific. And so I think there's a lot of boundaries, which I think is really good. And I don't shy away from tough conversations. Having been through a business partner breakup, having had a good business partnership, like I'm pretty clear on like, I know what works in these situations.
You've had so many changes and pivots, and even being here now, how do you for yourself define like what is success and what is failure? Because it sounds like so much of your story is this newness, right? So much of your success is new things, which means in some way moving away from and changing from what's worked in the past. So how do you know for yourself when you've won and when you feel like you've lost? Or is that feeling or that thought just not existent? Because it is so fluid between those two things.
It is so fluid. I think though, like the through line between all the businesses I've started is that they solve a problem. And if they're not solving that problem anymore, then I think that's failure. But I think I've been really good at identifying problems in the market. Obviously, Create and Cultivate early on, like there's no resources for female founders. In 2011, there wasn't. And so we created that and built that. Now, obviously, there are a million, which is amazing, but like we're the leaders, right? Like we started that. We were the first to market on that, and we've done that, and that's amazing. And then my other company, Cherub, which I haven't even talked to you about.
I know we haven't even gotten there yet.
So crazy. It's essentially a platform to connect angel investors and entrepreneurs using dating app mechanics where you can connect, do deals, things of that nature, was built out of my experience on the family office side. Yeah. So meeting with founders, raising venture, what I found was a lot of them weren't ready for venture. A lot of these early stage companies were like, I need to raise 250, 500,000. That's not venture. It could be a family office. If I were you, I would just go to angels. Go to angels, raise, you'll have a much higher valuation. You'll give up less of your company and you'll be in a good place for venture. And everyone was like, cool, where are the angels? Always. And I'm like, you can DM people, you can LinkedIn people.
Here's a list. Here's the Excel spreadsheet someone once made.
Send me. And then everyone was like, the cold intros aren't working. And it's just like dating. It's really hard. It's so much better when a friend of a friend introduces you to someone. There's validation there. I understand. So we were like, how do we create a platform for warm intros? And so that's what we do. It's a double opt-in. The angel has to be interested. The company has to be interested. We match you based on mutual tags. So like, I'm interested in female founded. I'm interested in profitable. I'm interested in CPG, whatever it is. So you're getting that warm intro off the bat. And so we launched that. And then within less than a year, over $3.5 million was deployed to founders through Cherub, which was exciting. And majority of those are underrepresented founders. We are solving the problem twofold. One, founders who need angels can't find them.
Yeah.
And two, angels who want to invest but don't have good deal flow. If I'm solving the problem and it's working, I'm feeling successful. Once that's stopped, that's when you have to like reevaluate.
Yeah. Have you launched something that wasn't solving a problem? And ultimately, how did you shift away from it or pivot?
Yes, I launched a wine line. It was called May. It was actually amazing. It was basically my first foray into CPG. Totally different business model than service lines. Being a service-based business, I learned so much. It was a masterclass in product. The idea behind it was, and the category I wanted to kind of disrupt was, when it comes to wine, there's obviously bottles of wine, expensive wine, and then there's canned wine. Like the single serve option is pretty much canned. For me, I sometimes would open a really nice bottle of wine, pour it in a glass, and then not drink the rest of the bottle.
Totally.
And then it would go bad. And I was like, what if there was mini glass bottles, single serve? Why isn't there glass? We launched these like really cute mini single serve glass bottles called May wines. The whole idea was like moderation made easy. Like that was our tagline. It was actually very successful out the gate. We sold a ton, grew our email list. The brand was really solid. The cost of shipping wine, wild. We could not get the margins right on this business. And it was so challenging to figure this out because we had to go into retail and we obviously had to get scale. And to do that, you need money. And I was at a point where, and this is a good segue, I was getting divorced. I was going through a divorce. My dog had died. I'd had like a lot of trauma happening and we were going to go out for this Series A. I don't think I can do it. And also, I don't think I'm the right person to do it. I had partners on the company who were way more well-versed in wine. And so I was like, do it without me. And they ended up actually doing a strategic acquisition with a partner that ended up buying them. I know my strengths. I can market the shit out of this product. But if it doesn't make money, you have to figure out that part of it, and that's not my expertise.
Yeah. It's funny. I was working on an early stage startup right out of the gate when I left Sweetgreen. And I had gotten brought in by a venture firm that was ultimately somewhat incubating the idea. And they brought me in and very quickly they made me the CEO. And we were out and we were raising capital and an investor actually pulled me to the side, someone that I had known from like my previous Sweetgreen life. And they were like, we're going to give you money. No problem. We'll give you this check, but we don't think you have enough equity in this business to incentivize you to stay. And we think that you're going to leave. And it was the first time I had really like questioned the structure that I had on this deal. And I was still pretty like young in my career and first time coming in really at the founder level. And I started to ask myself all these questions and kind of do my own diligence. And I realized, to your point, that I didn't have enough equity, that actually I had gotten not a sweetheart deal, that it was a little bit of a deal, that I was a newbie. I had never done this before.
Of course.
And I had gone in and I started getting the same feedback from a bunch of different investors, which was like, as the CEO of the company, and also as really the person we're investing in, because right now it's just an idea and it's a back of the napkin, no product yet developed idea. We're investing in you and you're going to have to be the one to stay. And I realized, one, that I didn't have enough financial incentive to make me stay the distance. And when I talk about the distance, it's not the first year or the second year or the third year. I feel like I can do anything for that long. It's the year 8, the year 9, when you're at that exact point that you're talking about where you're burnt out and you're exhausted and you've given everything you have to this company and you have to see it through. And so I also ended up stepping down and leaving. And it was a really hard thing from like an ego perspective at the time. And I kind of remember feeling like the whole world is going to see me naked. This is, in my mind, going to feel like a failure. How much of your ego did you feel when you stepped away? And what was that moment like for you, especially having been so successful with something like Create and Cultivate and No Subject?
Well, here's the good news. No one cares.
No one gives a shit. Oh, no one cares.
Literally no one gives a shit.
No one cared. And honestly, my ego got over it like really quick.
So fast.
No one cares.
But in the moment, I was like, oh, this is going to look so bad because we got a ton of press around it. And I was like horrified. You know what I mean? It's made me a better entrepreneur.
Definitely.
It was an incredible lesson. I learned so much. It helps me with investments and what to look for as I'm like angel investing and, doing things like that. It doesn't matter. It's so funny because everyone's like, Create Cultivate's so successful. It's so amazing that you had this business and you just did it. How did you do it? Just like knowing. I was like, do you know how many failed businesses I started? I had like a weird talent agency. Like I started for like interior design influencers, like you've never heard of.
Yeah.
Because it's, it's like there's so many, you dabble, you see what works. Majority of these entrepreneurs, whether it's like Sarah Blakely or Kendra Scott even like was saying she had a hat business before she had a jewelry business. You have to kind of roll the dice and see what sticks, and it's usually not the first thing you do.
No, and actually, I think it's also like getting clear on yourself and listening to that voice within yourself. Had you just gone through the motions of continuing to raise money for May, you would have been in this position where arguably 6 months later, 9 months later, a week later, you're actually having to step down from a company in which you raised money for.
Totally.
I think for
which
me,
is so bad. Yeah.
So bad. For me, when I stepped down from this company, it was actually like an act of self-love because I realized there was sort of like a tension between like male and female. The male co-founder that was brought in to run that business with me had triple the equity that I had and staying.
Tale as old as time.
Totally. And I didn't know what I didn't know then. And I was totally, in some ways, bamboozled. And once I actually realized the situation that I'd gotten myself in, it was like an act of self-love to be like, no, I'm actually deserving of more. I'm worthy of more. And in the end, if I stay, because I'm afraid of what other people will think, I am never going to be successful in this company. And it was interesting because out of the rubble of that failed quote unquote startup, Fahrenheit was born. And I would have never had the courage to start Fahrenheit if I hadn't released myself of what everyone thought, right? And what everyone thought or expected of me, which in the end, like no one cares. No one is paying attention to really anyone but themselves.
Totally.
Like no one has the capacity. No one has the space.
It's so true. But also kudos to those investors for telling you that. That's so important. And also like a really important lesson is always be willing to walk. You always have to be willing to walk. And that is such a hard thing to do if you're not being compensated properly. Yeah, there was a moment in the negotiations around Create Cultivate where they're like, come back and be the CEO, then we'll like invest. And I was like, you won't pay me my old salary because they had told me I was grossly overpaid, even though every single person I talked to was like, you're getting paid exactly what you should have gotten paid. Yeah. That's the standard payment for a CEO of the company that size. And so I was like, no, you have to be willing to say no and walk, which is hard, obviously. Yeah. But I think it also sets the tone and the precedent for the next woman coming in behind you.
It's also an act of like owning your boundaries. 100%. Like for you knew that you could not give Create and Cultivate what you had once given it.
Yeah.
Like you could not come in as the CEO 10 years ago where everything was new and you were hustling and you were running at every opportunity. And so I think also having the conviction, and I think conviction in general in business is so important, but like having the conviction to stick to your guns and do what you knew in your heart was right, no matter what anyone else asked and wanted, I think is such an important aspect of being successful or of growth. And sometimes we feel like other people have the answers and you can be really impressionable in business. And I think for me, the thing I've noticed about this era of my career, right? You and I are both like 20 plus years into our careers,
wow.
which is
we're so young. It's crazy.
Crazy.
No,
we're children.
I know.
And I feel like that is the thing that I've learned now is my most valuable tool. It's having the conviction to know what I know and go for it. It's not that I think I'm right or that I have the answers, but you've got to pick a lane and you've got to charge that lane with an energy and a passion that makes you feel clear and allows other people around you to feel clear.
100%. I do think that comes with experience. It's hard to do that early on because you just don't know.
Yeah, you just don't know. What do you wish you used to know? Like now that you have this experience, these 20 years of experience, you've sold Create and Cultivate, now you've bought it back, you're running multiple businesses at once. Like what's the one thing you would have told your like younger self?
It's so crazy because it does fall in line with exactly what we're saying is like, ask for more. There's like this fear of coming off as ungrateful or whatever it might be in your business. For so long at Create and Cultivate, made the same amount that I made the first day of that company for probably 8 years, 9 years. I never took a dime more.
Wow.
And then when Neha came in, she was like, you are the lowest paid person in this company. What are you doing? I have everything in this, like everything's done. And she's like, totally. You're very profitable. There's no reason you should not be making 4 times what you're making. And again, it took that person, just like the investors, to be like, you don't have enough equity. You're not getting paid enough for me to be like, I want to get paid more to like our, partners and board. And they're like, yeah, should have asked that a long time ago. You don't know what you don't know. And I think like, I wish I would have known my value more.
Yeah.
I think that comes with age and experience and, hard lessons and things like that. But I don't think I'd change anything. Because I think if I did, it would have changed the trajectory of what happened. And I think all of it has made me the person and the entrepreneur I am today.
Knowing your value, do you feel like that's something that is challenging for a lot of young female entrepreneurs? And if so, are you thinking about how your businesses, both through Cherub and Create and Cultivate, are teaching and helping others find and understand their value?
Yeah, 100%. Women underprice themselves all the time. It was so funny. I always reference this moment because I thought it was such a poignant moment. But Rachel Rogers, who's an amazing coach, entrepreneur, etc. I was at her mastermind, actually. I was speaking, but I listened in because I was I want to, learn from her. And this one girl got up. She had a cool company agency. She's like, I'm going to be pitching my business this year and going out for venture. And Rachel was like, cool. What's your goal? She's like, I'm going to raise $4 million. Amazing. Why? When you get in the room, what are you going to tell them? She goes, I'm going to tell these investors, I'm going to be an amazing steward of your capital. And Rachel goes, you know who doesn't give a fuck about being an amazing steward of your capital? Men. They don't give a full shit. Go in there and ask for the money because you deserve the money. And you do with that money what you want to do. For women, it's we feel oh my God, you gave me $1 million. I'm going to do so much with your money. I'm going to be so careful. We approach everything so carefully, so thoughtfully.
Yeah.
With so much empathy. And that's just how we lead, which is what makes us amazing leaders. But sometimes you do have to think like a man a little bit and be like, no, fuck, I want more money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Go into it with that mentality because I think so many women shy away and wait till they're noticed. Whereas men, like Bobby Hundreds, who I'm sure you know, always told me the story. He's like, all the guys in my company come in, Bobby, I need more money. I need more money. Blah, blah, blah. Life is crazy. I need more money. One of his employees, who's this woman, crushing it, absolutely killing it. Never ask for a raise.
Right. And if they do, they come in with a PowerPoint presentation,
exactly.
a complete script.
Yeah.
They've been planning it for months. They've practiced it on every person in their family and they still have anxiety.
Exactly. And
100%.
He literally was like, why don't you ask me for more money? And she's like, well, I just thought if I do a good job, you'll give it to me.
Yeah.
And he's like, these assholes are in my office every fucking day asking for more money.
I led a panel on leading with your values and understanding what the F values are. And in it, someone actually asked me a question. What do you value now that you didn't value when you were younger? And I actually said my femininity.
Yes.
When I was younger in my career, thought I had to show up. You and I both came out of the very hustle culture, deep hustle culture, where it was all about the Sheryl Sandberg lean in and breaking through the glass ceiling with a brute force, truly a brute force. For most of my career, I felt like I was going to war every single day.
Totally.
Strapping on my armor and actually going into battle. And all of a sudden, here I am in this later stage of my career. I went through this journey and this personal growth where I realized my softness, my feminine side, my empathy, my compassion are actually incredible tools for my growth. And now I value it so much more. And I think that part of that is also challenging these stigmas that as women have become so hard in the workplace and that are perpetuated by moments like me being in an early stage startup where I'm getting a fraction of the equity as a founder and a CEO that a man would get. And so I feel at Fahrenheit, something I really practice is whenever someone comes to me, and look, you know this better than anyone, as a fast-growing company, you can't make everyone happy in the way that they think, right? You can't give every single person what they want. But whenever someone comes to me, you're balancing constant priorities. When someone comes to me and they ask me for more money, I always say, I'm so proud of you for asking. And thank you so much for sharing your perspective. And I want Fahrenheit to be a place where you feel empowered to demand whatever you want. I might not be able to give it to you today. And here's the reasons why, right? There might be things in performance or there might be other priorities within the company. But I think creating a culture where women don't feel like they can't talk about money is so important.
Yeah.
And it's such a difficult thing, I think, especially in venture, right?
100%. Yeah. Being on a million pitches with founders, women pitch basically for the least amount of money. They're like, and I'm going, and here's every single thing I'm going to do. And this is a really fair valuation and blah, blah. I get on the phone with these, it's so funny. This one company, and they were like, we're doing 14 million revenue year 3. I was like, amazing. Good for you. That's so great. I look at the P&L, I'm like, you're spending $20 million in marketing. Your company is failing. What are you talking about? But I'm like, the way that they walked in, yeah, we're crushing. A woman would be horrified to walk in with that presentation. And they're $50 million, insane valuations for this company. I was like, this company ends in 3 years. But it was just so funny because I'm like, it's such a different game. And it was so funny. I was on a panel with someone and they were like, the thing for me as a VC is under promise, over deliver. That doesn't work for women. If we under promised, we would never get anywhere funded. We would get nowhere. Yeah. I was like, we have to over promise and over deliver. And that's our battle. It's really interesting to kind of see it that way. But I totally agree. The feminine energy approach, which is so interesting because there's been this overture of entrepreneurs. So Kendra Scott, 23 years into her career, Mickey Agrawal, 10 plus years into her career. You, me, Jenny Brittenbauer from Jenny's Ice Cream, 10 plus years in her career. Everyone's kind of on the second life.
Yeah.
And all of us are like, we're leaning into our femininity. We were in the era of like, you had to go to war every single day. You had to be a hard person to get anywhere. Otherwise, you'd get run over. And there was just no way. The only way through was like at brute force, to your point. And now I think we're all like, okay.
Hold up.
We need some we need to take care of ourselves, or we need to put our oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a different approach now, which is really nice to see.
We were talking about this earlier, but I went through a divorce and I know that you did as well. And I think for me, similar to your create and cultivate moment where you were like, I can't do this anymore. And I actually like can't even pretend. Mine was my divorce. I had come out of running marketing and brand at Sweetgreen for almost 4 years during the really like the heyday growth of the company, establishing it as the leader on the national stage, which was one of the biggest joys of my life and best experiences, but also exhausting. And I remember coming out of it feeling like I was a weekend at Bernie's, like shell of my former self, barely could lift my arm up off the ground, and then was hit with this really sort of like unforeseen shift in my life, which was going through a divorce. And I think coming out of that time, the brute force, not only was it not going to get me to where I needed to go, it was impossible. Like I did not have the warrior spirit in me anymore.
Yeah, you break.
You break.
Eventually.
And I think that a lot of people look at successful founders, successful entrepreneurs, successful leaders, and in the world we live in today with social media, it's very obvious that anything that you look at is going to be the successes and the wins and
of course,
the great
highlight
moments
reel.
And the highlight reel. But I think the more founders I talk to and the more founders I work with at Fahrenheit, the more that I realize every single person has gone through some journey and through some change. And for me, the catalyzing moment was actually my divorce, because in that divorce moment, I could no longer pretend to have it all together, to be perfect, to have every answer. And all I could do every day was wake up and put one foot in front of the other and try to be my best. And in the end, what I realized was my best is actually enough. My best is enough for what I want to accomplish and for where I want to go in my life. And that was the most freeing experience for me, to be able to operate from this place for the first time of vulnerability, of compassion, of transparency, which is that feminine side that we're talking about. So how did your divorce impact you as a woman, as a leader, as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, all the things. I think also not dissimilar, like my marriage, the entirety of like my 10-year relationship was the most insane. Well, I would say 8 of the 10 was the craziest years of my life with my business.
Yeah, same.
Unintentionally. Like that just is how it happened, right? And so I think at the end of the day, I didn't have the emotional capacity, frankly, to like be a good partner in the marriage myself. And that affected my partner. And therefore, he had issues that he had. And so, I always think I probably should have gotten divorced much earlier.
Yeah.
But I could not emotionally deal with the company and this happening at the same time. It was just too much to take on, and I knew I would break if I tried. And so it was interesting because like my whole life was when I sell the company. Well, when I sell the company, I'm going to chill. And when I sell the company, our marriage is going to get good. And when I sell the company, we can have kids. And when I sell. And like, here's the thing, it takes a long fucking time to sell a company. And so literally, and here's the ironic part. When I sold the company, it all fell apart.
Yeah.
So it actually had the opposite action, but it was good. It was like, when I sold the company, I had to do very deep reflection on who I was as a person. Because as you said, your entire identity is wrapped up in your business. So now I'm just Jaclyn. I'm not Jaclyn, the founder of Create and Cultivate. I'm not Jaclyn, the CEO of Create and Cultivate. I'm just Jaclyn, living at home, waking up and gardening. And I'm like, what do I like? What do I want my life to look like? It's a very out-of-body experience. And then also, like, has my marriage gone past the point of fixing? And that's a hard pill to swallow, right? Like, in a lot of different ways. And then all of a sudden, like, a lot of just things were going wrong in my life. Like, just like stupid things, but like the problems with my house and like dealing with like an issue here. And then like my dog dying unexpectedly. It was just like a rough year, buried me into the ground when I thought it was going to be like the year of my bank account is full. I'm on in Napa. Like, my marriage is going to be better. And it was like the total opposite. And honestly, like rock bottom can be a gift. And like I genuinely was so beaten down that I had to start rebuilding, and getting divorced is so hard. It's so challenging to make that decision, especially for like long-term relationships like ours. Like it's unpacking, years together with someone. And it was definitely a challenge. And I'll say this, like, I'm very proud of our divorce. And I also am proud that we're still friends, actually, like really good friends. But I will say the day it was done, I felt like an elephant had stepped off my chest in a way that I had not felt in so long. And I think as women, or at least in my experience, I want everything to be successful, and I want to fix people, and I want to be a problem solver. And I just kept trying to fix it, and it kept breaking. And it had to get to the point where I had to accept that I was not going to be able to fix it.
Yeah.
And I think once you get to that point, you get like this very calm clarity, and you can see everything from, miles above the earth. And you're like, okay, now this is my life. And now also on the flip side of that, I was 37. I didn't want to be, I was like, now I have to be single. I don't have the job I used to have. And I like want kids, and I have to date. And like, that's scary too. That's like a whole other leap.
Yeah.
But it's like, you kind of have to jump. It's the same thing with building a business. You have to jump and figure out the parachute on the way down.
I really resonate with so much of what you just said, because I think for me and my reflection also of my own divorce and my own journey, I realized like part of it was being busy.
Yes.
Like as women, as entrepreneurs, I was so busy that it wasn't until there was a break or a moment or a pause where I actually got to take stock of everything that was happening around me and see these things that in some ways were right in front of me. And I think so many of us create these milestones. Like I will when is probably a sentence I say daily, right? Like, and there always is this moment you imagine. And I actually have this saying at Fahrenheit, we do this thing called Set the Tone, where we do like a weekly sort of session, and we talk about ideas, theories, feelings, universal truths that we're all experiencing. And I have one that's called There Is No Utopia. And it is sort of this idea that we have to remind ourselves that the journey is the destination. There is no moment where I am going to be like perfect skin, perfect hair, perfect body, the perfect wife, the perfect leader, the perfect entrepreneur, money in my bank account, like my health is at the best it's ever been. Like getting to that moment is actually maybe like a fallacy. Maybe that's the fantasy that all of us, I think, have those moments. I will do this when. I think I probably said, I will do this when I sell Fahrenheit. I'm not even in the process of selling Fahrenheit. It's not even on my radar. And I still have this thought in my head of like, oh, I'll be a good wife when that happens. And I feel like the challenge is, how do you as an entrepreneur create the time and the space in your everyday to not have those milestones? Where also, and I went through a really challenging year this year, my father passed away. So the lesson for me this year has been like, life is actually so short.
So short.
And if I wait until these moments that I've created for myself, these goalposts, to live the life I want to live, or be the leader or the friend or the sister that I want to be, I might actually like miss the moment.
Yeah, I always say someday is today.
Yeah.
Like when you're like, well, someday, like that's today.
Yeah.
Today is the day. You have to either do it or not. And that took me so long to get to that place. And it was really like during that time in Napa. And like now I just feel like I'm excited to go live my life. Yeah. And not that I wasn't for so long. When you're working that hard and you're that busy, your nervous system is shot. Totally. You don't feel things
or
in
process.
the way you don't feel things. You don't process in a normal way because you're so adrenaline driven on that like busy. And everyone glorifies it.
I even got the feeling of glory while you were saying it just now. I was like, I remember what that feels like.
Totally,
yeah,
where
completely.
It was like, you are killing it.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, I'm dying.
You're like, I am actually killing myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is what's happening.
But like, we glorify it. It makes you feel valued. Another thing I experienced is feeling irrelevant. When I stepped down as CEO of Create Cultivate, I didn't have those emails and couldn't get people to speak on the stage. I felt very irrelevant.
The constant dopamine hit.
The
all
dopamine
day, every
hit.
head, all day.
I want to be your friend. I want to talk to you. I want to be on your stage. I like, whoa, good job, great job. Here's press. Nothing, cricket. You kind of have to sit in the irrelevancy and kind of soak it up. All of this is nothing. None of it matters.
None of it matters.
None of it matters. Yeah. All that matters at the end of the day is like your friends, your family, your health, and like the experience you want to have on this earth.
Yeah.
And work is part of that, of course, but it doesn't have to be all of that. And I think we're in the generation of, it has to be all of that. And we have to be perfect at everything.
Yeah. acceptance and growth are like a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked a little bit about acceptance, wanting to grow and to learn and to evolve and to change and to pivot, which you have done many, many times, is one thing. But also we have to learn and be accepting of who we are. And I can do both at the same time. It's like the both and, which is I have to love myself for who I am, but I also want to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are also things I have to learn how to accept about myself. And I think to your point, whether it's living in the irrelevancy or accepting that your relationship failed or accepting that your startup didn't work, that is also part of the experience and okay too, while also wanting to grow. And sometimes I feel like those two things in a way are at odds with one another.
Totally.
And you can actually use acceptance as a weapon, right? Being like, I'm nasty at work and that's who I am, so accept it. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, like that's just using it as a tool or a weapon. But I really feel like so much of entrepreneurship, it's about both.
Mm-hmm.
It's about learning to accept and let go and let go of control, which you've done in your business, and hire that CEO. And also trying to better yourself, your business, and grow every single day.
Yeah. And it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do. And it really takes a lot of self-reflection, which is also hard to do when you're so busy.
Yeah. For someone who is just starting out and who really is either looking for funding, which is an area of expertise for you, or who is trying to build their own business, like what would you tell them? What bit of advice where do they start?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of hype around a venture-backed business. And I think people are like, I want a venture-backed business. I want to sell my company. Most people will not sell a company.
Yeah.
I think that's like an important thing because I think there's this dream sold to everyone. Like every business is sellable. Everything is like whatever. And that's okay. And I think I always ask people, I had actually a call on intro, like with this great team couple who's like killing it, has this really cool business. And they're like, do we raise money? Like they're doing really well. And I said,
no.
But I literally was like, what do you want your life to look like? You have 4 kids. Your business is doing extremely well. You can keep doing this. You can keep doing this. Or you can go raise money. And at that point, you have people in your business. You have people you have to report to. And their expectation is you 10x their investment, which is fine. That means you have a bigger team. You have more responsibilities. You have an office now. You have this. You have that. I was like, if that's what you want your life to look like, do it. But if you just want a good business and to pick up your kids at 3, do that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with either of those choices. And I think for so long it was like, push, grow, do it, raise, billion-dollar valuation, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, give me a lifestyle business any day of the week.
100%.
You know?
Give me a profitable business.
Give me a profitable business any day of the week. That's great. And I think what we don't think about when, your business is doing well and everyone's calling you and wants to write you a check and this and that, is you're so excited, right?
Yeah.
But take a minute to be like, what do I want my life to look like?
Definitely.
Because they're 2 very different paths.
Yeah. Fahrenheit is the first profitable business I've ever worked at.
Amazing. That's crazy.
And by the way, I've worked at and worked for and worked with incredible venture-backed startups, massive organizations. And then I started Fahrenheit, did what so many people thought I couldn't do. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what a profitable business looks like. And there is value in that too. And I think it is such an interesting question to ask, which is like, what do you want? Because going back to the whole idea that no one really gives a shit and there's no one that is looking at your journey more than you are, you've got to focus in on what you care about and not what you think everyone should do. And I think coming out of that hustle culture that we were in like the 2000s, early 2000s, I feel like so much of what at least then guided me was what I thought I was supposed to do versus what I actually wanted to do.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah. So amen to doing what we want to do.
Yes. And on our own terms now.
100%.
Love it.
Jaclyn, thank you so much.
Oh my God,
this was
thank
the best.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Fahrenheit podcast. If you loved this episode, learned something new, or made you think differently, please be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you get your podcasts. See you next time.